New skills. I think it's really relevant at the moment, and particularly when we have to learn new things, the challenge sometimes seems too much and it holds us back from doing the things that we know we should be doing. So I thought it'd be a good idea to share what some of you might already know, but actually when you get reminded of these things, sometimes it makes you realize actually where you are in a process. And I think everything boils down to a process. And if you can understand what the process is, then you can put yourself in the position you are in that process, and then hopefully then move towards the next step in the process. So what I'm going to share with you is the 4 steps process that we go through to learn any new skill. So the first step is always that we realize that we don't know what we don't know. Now, I think the easiest way to talk about this is to relate it to when we learn how to drive a car. I think most of us done that. I know some haven't, but when we first get in the driving seat of a car, we suddenly realise that actually there's more to it than probably we first realised. The excitement first of getting behind the wheel actually then becomes a bit of a overwhelmed situation where you realise that you've got to look out the windscreen, you've got to learn how to use all the gadgets, and you've got to move your feet at the right time. All these things become quite overwhelming. So you realise actually you don't really know much about driving a car, you've just watched other people doing it. So the next step is that we go to a position of conscious incompetence. The previous step was unconscious incompetence, so we didn't really know what we wanted, what we needed to know, I should say. So this step is the second step where we become, or we realise what we don't know, and we start to learn. And this is quite often where a lot of people give up, realise or decide that it's just too much to learn, and they don't really want to learn things after all. So they get stuck at this point and think that it's too much trouble and they can't see the point. Not sure if it's okay. Thanks, Jeff. I'll hopefully that's not for everybody. I'll see what everybody else says. Thank you for that. So we realise what we don't know and start to learn. That's the point. We have to start learning this stuff. Next step is that we start to practice. Well, practice actually starts paying off, and we start to get better at what we are trying to achieve and what we're trying to learn. But we still have to think about it quite a lot. That's the thing. We have to really sort of concentrate. We haven't really mastered it just yet. And because of that, it still is quite hard work. And we have to really think about it. Good, I've got okay in Singapore. That's good to hear. So we have to practice what we're doing and make sure that we stick at it. And this is the point where we can often give up. And we realise that actually it's quite hard work. If we give up at this point, then obviously all what we've been through has been a bit of a waste of time. So at each point in this process, we've got to think about where we are, how we've progressed, and how we are moving towards what we ultimately want to do. So we go back to the car situation. We get behind the wheel. We don't know what to do. Then we start learning. We start driving with someone next to us. We start to get used to starting the car, driving it, and all the other things that we have to do at the same time. And then at this stage, we are getting behind the wheel, but we're still having to think a lot about what we're doing. It's not come as second nature just yet. So the next step and the last step is the unconscious competence bit, where we don't really need to think about what we're doing anymore, and we're confident about what we do, and the thinking part is gone. We just get in the car and we drive the car without really thinking about it. So this process is what we go through, and I come across it a lot when I'm teaching my stuff. When I'm talking to someone that is first in a leadership position, sometimes it can be quite daunting in that there is so much to do, in that they've never really been in that position before. And with the case of a business owner, they've already got skills that they want to use. They're good at something already. And to think that they've got to learn and become good at something again can be quite a barrier. And so what it's good to do is always remember that there's a process, and that's what I do with what I teach, is understanding there's 4 steps of this process, and it's good to think of it in respect to a gear 1, gear 2, gear 3 and gear 4, so that once you get to gear 4 you're going along nicely, everything's smooth, and you haven't got to worry too much about things. Everything sort of seems to be hunky-dory, but remembering that there'll come a time when we probably have to change down the gear when the road ahead changes. That's quite important to remember. So just to quickly recap then, the 4 stages of our learning process is firstly unconscious incompetence. So we don't know what we don't know. Next step is conscious incompetence. So we realise what we don't know, and we're not very good at it. We haven't got the skills yet. 4th step is conscious competence. So we're getting used to what we need to know, but we haven't really mastered it yet. And then the last stage is unconscious competence, where we're not consciously having to think about it. We have got the skills that we need, and this is the place where we just do it without really thinking about it. And that's where it doesn't become a burden anymore. It becomes actually something that's part of you. It's something that you can do without thinking. And obviously it takes a lot less energy at that point. And when we start at the beginning, it takes a lot of energy. We've got to be consistent. We've got to persevere. And as we move around the 4 steps, when we get to the last step, then the last step is the easiest step. It's very similar to the leadership model that I teach, in that we start with the vision, we then go to mobilize the vision. Next is developing the vision, and then ultimately enabling that vision. So passing over the process and the vision to the team members, because they've adopted it from your original vision. So I hope that's useful. It's something that I talk about quite a lot and explain, especially with new clients, realizing that sometimes what they are setting out to do might be a bit daunting. But if you start with a clear idea of where you're going, why you want to learn the new skill, and obviously these skills are not just for business. There's lots of skills that we need to learn, even like learning to... Hi Claire, good for you to join again. What we've got to remember is that we've got to just make sure that we stay on track, persevere, and realise that ultimately it'll be all worth it. So I hope this has been useful, and if you have enjoyed it and you think it's worthwhile, then please link to this, let other people share this and understand it. That's the whole point. We all got to learn new skills all the time. If we stop learning new skills, ultimately we stop growing, and when we stop growing, then ultimately you could say that we're dying, and we don't want that, do we? Thank you, Claire, for all your feedback, and I will see everyone again on the next episode of the Get Savvy show from the Reluctant Leader Academy. Until then, have a great day and enjoy the weekend.